Distinguished viewers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my show. I'm Majok Dipiridut. Today, I've decided to take you through South Sudan political landscape and navigate few political issues with you. Basically, my today's topic would revolve around peace. By saying this, I would begin by demonstrating that the return of a genuine and comprehensive peace to South Sudan is very imminent. It is very imminent because of the fact that the government of South Sudan and some opposition forces in the Sudanese capital have recently shown a very serious and promising level of cooperation. And because of that, they have successfully signed two protocols, one on the governance and the other on the economic revitalization. On the governance, it was agreed by the two warring parties that the government of South Sudan and the opposition camps must share power. This is the reason why people talk about 5 vice presidents. It is because of this fact also that people talk about the distribution of the ministerial positions. It is also because of this reality that President Salva stressed firmly that out of 32 states, 14 states would be given to the opposition. What this means is that the gubernatorial positions must be split. Now, this is very promising. It is also agreed that the parliament of South Sudan must be shared with the opposition as well. Now, on the governance, this is a success story. On the economic protocol, it was agreed that the government of South Sudan, the opposition forces, and the host country, North Sudan, must put their forces together so that the oil fields within the Republic of South Sudan are secured and the oil exploration is resumed so that it goes through North Sudan all the way to international market. Now, that means South Sudan economy is being revitalized. Not only is that going to benefit South Sudan economy, but North Sudan economy as well. Now, this is a very good news. And President Salva Kiir Mayardit must be applauded for his bold move. I'm saying this because President Salva had tried his best touring neighboring countries from one capital city to another capital city, from Kampala to Nairobi to Addis Ababa, and finally to Khartoum, convincing these leaders that there is need for the opposition groups and the government of South Sudan to come together so that peace is signed. Now, that is a big credit to me personally, because if I were the president of South Sudan, I would have not sit with the opposition. Why? Because of the fact that, look at South Sudan, since 2013 until today. Now the opposition, especially the SPLM, SPLA in opposition, have tried to capture territories after territories, towns after towns, causing destructions, killing of civilians, etc. But President Salva had tried his best to regain all the territories, especially in Upper Nile, starting with Bor to Bantu and Malakal, and finally overrunning the SPLM, SPLA in opposition stronghold, Pagak. Despite that, President Salva had to sit with the opposition to sign peace. Now, this is President Salva. If it was other individual in South Sudan, that's the reason I said if it was me, I would have not sit with Dr. Riek Machar and all these opposition forces. Because in politics, negotiations on the table are determined by victories on the fronts. And this is a good example because the achievement of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005 was realized because the SPLA, SPLM under Salva Kiir and Dr. John Garang had to fight seriously to liberate most areas from Equatoria all the way to Bahr al-Ghazal and then to Upper Nile, and they had to shut down the oil and push the war to War Zone 2 in eastern Sudan and in Blue Nile, in Nuba Mountain, and threatening Khartoum. Now those victories had forced Bashir to sit. But before that, from 1989 all the way to 1990 to 91, 92, 93, Bashir was very powerful. That was the reason why the Abuja 1 and Abuja 2 were not successful, because Bashir was in control of the entire Bahr al-Ghazal and most areas in Equatoria, and mostly the entire Upper Nile region. And the SPLA was pushed to the fringes of South Sudan, especially towards the border of Uganda in Numili, and areas like Nairuz in Kenya, and Buma toward Ethiopia. So practically, if we talk about politics, for some of us who have studied international politics, if I were in the position of President Salva, even Riek Machar would have not suggest to call for me as the president to sit with him to discuss peace. But that is President Salva Kiir Mayardit, the most humble person in South Sudan. And this is the reason why we say that South Sudan is very lucky to have an individual like President Salva Kiir Mayardit, because the man is too humble. So that thank must go to President Salva Kiir Mayardit, because the man is very peaceful, despite the fact that he crushed the opposition forces to the extent of capturing Pagak. He had to sit with Dr. Riek Machar in Khartoum to sign the agreement and to accept the position of 5 vice presidents. Even Bashir himself, the host nation, would not accept that, to sit with those of Nuba and Darfur and to talk about having 3 or 4, let alone 5 vice presidents. In Uganda here, Museveni cannot accept such nonsense, let alone in Kenya and Ethiopia. So President Salva deserves our respect. He's a very humble person. Now, I want the opposition, the SPLM in opposition, and the former detainees, plus the South Sudan Alliance opposition, to grab this opportunity strongly and accept whatever President Salva offered them and walk to Khartoum. But I'm afraid that the SPLM, SPLA in opposition plus others will mess this up. They will mess it up because of greediness, because of false pride. Now, I want to say this. The comprehensive peace has not yet come to South Sudan. Only 2 protocols have been signed. But there is a very serious single protocol that has not yet been signed, and that is security protocol. Security protocol, people are in negotiation at the moment, because if that security protocol is completely signed, then the comprehensive agreement would be within reach. But I want to say this, especially to the SPLM, SPLA in opposition. Those who are advisors to Dr. Riek Machar at the highest level, leadership level of the SPLM in opposition, they must be very careful what to tell Dr. Riek Machar. They must advise him properly and honestly. First of all, if I were Dr. Riek advisor on security matters, I would be honest with him that Mr. President, because Riek is their president, or Mr. Chairman, I would tell him that, Mr. Chairman, we need to see around us. Militarily, we are not as strong, so we should not demand for too much issues to do with security. They must be very honest and they must be very reasonable. I'm saying this because they will mess it up, because an IO as a movement is full of inexperience. A lot of people from refugee camps, a lot of people from Australia, from America, from Canada, from North Sudan, from Egypt, from all these areas, they had stormed into the IO. And Riek Machar, because he's too desperate, he received them and put them in various highest position of the SPLM, SPLM opposition leadership. Within, they are messing up everything. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that the SPLM opposition must drop this idea, this crazy idea of 12,000 troops, because this is what they are talking about now. They are talking about the taking of 12,000 troops to Juba. Now the question is, if they have these 12,000 troops, why are they not fighting the government? IO has no army in South Sudan, whether white army or black army or whatever, they don't. Now what they should do, they should humble themselves and reduce that number at least to 2,000 or 3,000 and go to Juba and wait for the election. That would be the wisest idea ever. But if they confuse themselves, if they confuse Riek Machar, if they become dishonest, if they don't consider their positions on the ground, especially on the military front, then I'm afraid they would mess up everything. And if they take that position of 12,000 troops to the table, and as President Salva Kiir Mayardit and those of Kwal Manyang and Akolokor and all the government officials in South Sudan, they will say, no, we cannot accept such forces to be brought to Juba. And if that happens, then the whole thing will collapse. The governance protocol would collapse. The protocol on the economic revitalization would collapse as well. And then people have to go to square one. And if that happened, that would be a disaster to the IO, because Khartoum will not accept Riek Machar to stay there anymore. I'm not talking about Uganda. Uganda is a red line for Dr. Riek Machar. Nairobi are very serious. President Kenyatta and William Ruto are very serious at the moment. That was the reason why they were asked to leave Nairobi. And most of the officials were apprehended from their homes and they were extradited to Juba. So Ethiopia is very clear. So the IO has no choice. They have to be very careful. Otherwise, what Ambassador Dudeman will say would be true. That if Riek Machar do not want to sign this agreement faithfully, then we will have no choice but to confine him or send him back to South Africa. So people need to be very honest, ladies and gentlemen. The reason we say this, especially myself, when I say we, I mean government supporters, is that we wonder sometimes whether those within the SPLM, SPLA in opposition reason genuinely. Because it is very important, like I said before, if you want to score a political point on the table, you must have strength on the ground, militarily. I mean, this is a common sense thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will not proceed any further, but I want to stop here. Let me conclude by saying this. It is very promising that the two protocols have been signed, governance and on the economic revitalization. Now, President Salva Kiir Mayardit is very honest and is very faithful. He meant what he signed. That was the reason why he gave 5 vice presidents positions to the opposition forces. Now, it is up to the IO to think and act in a very clever manner when it comes to the issue of security protocol. They need to humble themselves and they need to be logical and reasonable. Otherwise, things would fall apart. And when that thing happens, then the only way will be that majority of those who call themselves supporters and members of the IO, some of them would go back to America, others would go back to Canada, others would come back here to Australia, and majority of the people, especially their supporters, will go back to refugee camps. Majority will go back to the IDP camps, and Dr. Riek Machar will end up in South Africa. But that has to be avoided. But that needs brain. I will stop here. Thank you very much. God bless you all.